So it was interesting sitting over on the side. Saw a lot of people saying the government should fund. And Scott, I think you had it right. It's access to capital. So I'm going to go off script right away. Are there slides? I guess there are. So I'm going to go off script right away. One of the new initiatives being put in place by my boss and Scott's office is a trusted marketplace. Okay? And the trusted marketplace, the idea is for small firms that need capital and are working on something we, the department, need. We're partnering up with some venture capital firms to do matchmaking. So we're trying to expose those companies, those small firms that need money, that are working on products that the department needs, to VC. That's one way of getting capital. Another way is getting capital through federal funding. But we have to stop this, the feds are going to fund everything. We got to think through the problem and come at it creatively. And there's multiple sources of money. I know everybody wants federal money, but have you all looked at the budget lately? I mean, we do have a lot of money in the department. But I have a question for you. By 2026, what's going to be larger? The defense budget, or I love this term, servicing the debt. Servicing the debt. Does that really anger anybody? We're going to be paying more money to get nothing than the Department of Defense has by 2026. So this concept that the feds are going to fund everything, I wish we could. Are you all taxpayers? Give me 70% of your income and we can fund everything. Is that a good idea? No. Well, so we only had one guy say it's not a good idea. So the rest of you think that's a good idea, right? Not a good idea. So we have to think about it. The access to capital is the key. So I'm going to go through a few slides only because I'm from the department. Oh, okay. And we get paid for showing our mission statement and all that stuff. But I think this is important. So where do I live and what do I do every day? So I'm the deputy for acquisition sustainment. You see the formal mission statement up there. But for me, I've internalized that to mean getting the best operational capability for the taxpayer dollars in support of the young men and women that are going out in harm's way. So any of you have family members that are deployed anywhere or have been? Okay. That's a pretty important thing that those people are doing. We have to do our best to get the best possible operational capability. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, I got to tell you, I was supposed to introduce myself. My name's Al. So I came back to this position after being in Paris for 3 years, working at NATO, because this mission matters. Field and capability matters. I don't know about you, but I'm a little nervous about what's going on in the Middle East. Okay, so 2 people, 3 people over here are nervous. The rest of you, yeah, I'm a little nervous. But do I want to go in there with a fair fight? Nope. Anytime we deploy our young men and women, I don't want it to be a fair fight. I want us to be able to get in, do what we have to do, and get out. There's a lot of things that we shouldn't do. I won't get into all that, but I don't want a fair fight. So I'm putting this up here because I think it's really important. How many folks from academia? Holy cow. I love it. At one point in my life, I ran research and engineering, so I was responsible for the university research program. If you have not read, and it's a little bit old now, it's about 15 months old. If you have not read the National Defense Strategy, I would highly recommend that you do it. Because it is the first time. Now, I've been in Washington for a long time. I came here as a colonel, and that was a lot of years ago. The Department of Defense, as other federal agencies, are really good at writing meaningless strategies, stuffed with a lot of adjectives and adverbs and, no real concrete things. This was driven by then Secretary Mattis, and it's a very elegant document. So it's about 20 pages. If you have not read it, I recommend you do, because he says we really have 3 things we have to do. One is increase our lethality. So for whatever money we're paying for defense, we want to be more lethal. Remember that. We don't want a fair fight. The second line of effort is strengthen alliances and attract new partners. So what do you think that means? Are we talking about nations? I'm trying to get you guys involved. By the way, this is supposed to be interactive, so if you have questions, please stop me. So yeah, it's talking about nations, but it's talking about more than nations. Okay, the department needs alliances with industry, with academia, with other federal agencies. Partnership only means you have two different entities that come together. So we're trying to work more closely with other agencies, other groups, folks we hadn't thought of before, as well as additional countries. And then the third line of effort is reform the department. So what does that mean? How many of you have worked in the Pentagon? I know one. Mike, how you doing? It can be a little bit slow and bureaucratic. We're trying to beat some of that out of there. We're trying to get more agility into the department. Now, when we're making decisions that might involve, 10 or $20 billion, you don't want a snap decision. You need to think through it. But a lot of what we do day to day is just routine, mind-numbing bureaucracy. So we're trying to get rid of some of that. We're trying to get rid of a lot of the regulatory things, and we're trying to become more agile. But the entire document was built around a shift. So for the last 19 years, our nation has focused its warfighting effort on counterinsurgency. Okay? We were struck on September 11th, and we wanted to get rid of terrorists. It's a hard thing to do, as it turns out. But now we have a competition of great powers, and this is called out. Now, I'm going to sit up here, and I will tell you, I came on active duty in 1976. You can do the math, at the height of the Cold War. So I don't want to sound like an old Cold Warrior. But Russia and China are both doing things that are not acceptable in the international norm. Okay? I love this, by the way, I love this cover from The Economist. I don't know if you can see it because the slides are kind of small. And any knowledge I have comes from The Economist magazine. For the young interns, get a subscription to The Economist, read it cover to cover every week. I find time to. I work 70 hours a week and I still find time to read it. So if I can leave nothing else good here, read The Economist. So what you have here is the China bear. Does China play fair? A lot of you are in industry or academia. Does China play fair? No. I do not believe so. By the way, on this, it's really nice because you see the aces stuffed up the sleeve. So here's an estimate for you. I'm going to ask you, how much intellectual property does China steal from the U.S. and U.S. firms every year? Anybody know the estimate? $600 billion a year. So that's about the same. Yeah. So someone coming into Wall Street, walking down Wall Street with a couple of big bags and pulling $600 billion out, would you consider that to be an offensive act? I think it's tantamount to a declaration of economic war. Okay? And this is all being done in cyberspace. It's not coincidental that the Chinese J-20 fighter, by the way, that is the second fifth-generation fighter, so China's the second nation with a fifth-gen fighter. It's not coincidental that the J-20 looks a lot like the Joint Strike Fighter, because China has, for at least the last couple of decades, and they've been very good for the last decade, come into unsecure, unhardened civilian commercial databases and taken what was largely unclassified information and then put it together. Is that acceptable in the international norm, that you go steal other people's intellectual property? It is not. And I think it's good and I think it's right that the administration and Congress is saying this has got to cease. For academia, it should upset you guys, because I work with someone who had their PhD thesis stolen about a month before they were getting ready to publish, and was published. What happens if you're the second person publishing a PhD thesis? You got to go back and redo work. That's wasted time and effort. Industry, do you like giving away your intellectual property? Anybody? Are we awake? No. It's not a rhetorical question. I'm trying to get a sense of this is wrong, and this is worth taking a stand against. Yes?
I think as an industry, we do give away our intellectual property, knowingly. I have never seen Chinese salespeople traveling in US. I've only seen US procurement managers traveling in China every day. We go there to give, because we want cheap goods from there. We travel there with our intellectual property, with our blueprints, because we want to source.
That's your choice. I find it offensive that if you did make a decision, if you make a decision to give it away, that's your choice. If they come into your room when you're down at dinner and copy the blueprints, I find that offensive. Just me. I could be wrong. So you can see the things there that I think that are not, and by the way, it's not just me, that we're worried about with China and Russia. So why does it matter? From a military perspective, the next battle is not going to be won by the guy with the biggest biceps. Okay? That was the case when I came on active duty in '76. The B-52 helped, but that's another story. But future wars are going to be won by being able to get to the decision most quickly. Okay? Artificial intelligence. By the way, I really detest the phrase artificial intelligence because a lot of people use it and don't know what it means. But my definition of artificial intelligence is machine learning that will allow you to process a great deal of data to get to an assistance for a decision more quickly. Okay? Artificial intelligence is predicated on data. So the first digital battleground is 5G and Huawei. Now I know there's a lot of hype about this, but at the end of the day, 5G systems are nothing more than software-defined radios. Software-defined radios can have code in them. They can divert information from your handset back to China. By the way, firms in China who deal with other nations are required by law to have ties to the intelligence community. Okay? So does 5G matter? 5G only matters if you care about protecting your data. The Defense Department cares about protecting our data. It's that simple. If we have information that will give us, remember, an unfair fight, I don't want that data being accessed by China. There's a great quote in the bottom by Bill Moran, who's going to become the next Chief of Naval Operations here in a couple of weeks. And I think it's very prescient. Can you see that in the back? It's a terrific quote. That shows a real understanding of where we're going. And by the way, I am coming to something on manufacturing with this. So we've had a number of acquisition reforms from our board of directors over the last couple of years. Everybody know who the department's board of directors are? Congress. That's okay. That's the way our Constitution's written. But we've had about 160 separate pieces of legislation, statute, over the last 4 years. I want to highlight a couple of them because this matters and where it ties together. We want to enhance prototyping. Why? Because you have to go faster. You want to buy time out of the system. We want to use alternative, and I'm using the word contracts in parentheses, but that would be other transaction authorities, other types of ways of getting money out the door. Faster, quickly. Perfect. I'm going to keep on prompting you guys, because if I don't, you're going to fall asleep or I'm going to fall asleep, and either way, it's a bad thing. Third thing, middle tier of acquisition, Section 804. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, this is important, especially for manufacturing and industry. Middle tier of acquisition are programs that can go without a formal blessing of requirements from the Joint Requirements Oversight Committee, Council, whatever it is in the joint staff, as long as a product is fielded in 5 years. I think it's 5, it may be 4. But the point is, again, quickly. And the Air Force now has a plan to build and fly a satellite using Section 804 authorities, middle tier of acquisition. Much less requirements, much less bureaucracy. Get it out the door in 4 to 5 years. Does that sound like a good idea? So what does that mean for industry? We're trying to become more agile. We work in a bureaucracy. Where do we find agility? Industry. Yeah. And then finally, we've been instructed to build the industrial base. So Scott, you want to brief this chart? You're doing a great job. That'll be good. I'll buy you a Coke when you come back. So this is the mission of our industrial policy organization. It was stood up from what used to be manufacturing, industrial base, something, yeah. But this office really focuses on working with industry to secure information, to not let companies be bought by folks we don't want them to be bought by, and most importantly, implementing something called Executive Order 13806. How many of you have looked at the 13806 report? It's available online. Okay, so about a third of the room. For the 2/3 of you who have not looked at it, you have to, if you're in this place, if you paid money to come to this, this event, go download it. It's free.
Yeah, it's free.
It's free.
It's still gonna do it.
It's very good. It's basically an executive order to assess the health of the defense industrial base and manufacturing capabilities for the Department for National Security. We found roughly 120 technological sectors where we had either a fragile supply chain or sole source or something along those lines that really put our future national security programs in jeopardy. And we're using that with an implementation. The report was released last October. Now we're on the first rev of what are we going to do about it, how are we going to implement some of the fixes. But a lot of this is driving increase in investment in Defense Production Act Title III. I heard someone talk about that. In a program called IBAS. Help me, Scott.
Well,
Industrial base.
Industrial base analysis and sustainment.
Perfect. Yep. And then we have other programs in R&E side. But so we have a huge influx of cash and authority to help the manufacturing base and the industrial base work in sectors that are important to the department, and yet we're not competitive. So on the 10th of June, the way some of these work, the president has to sign a presidential determination. On the 10th of June, The president signed a presidential determination which will allow us to go forward with Defense Production Act Title III for small unmanned aerial systems. Laughter? It's okay.
I'm not laughing. It was a huge issue in California.
It's a huge, well, so there's a couple of issues with that. One, the first huge issue is, you know, some of the policy and regulatory. But the second is, where are all the UASs made now? China. They all transmit stuff back to China. We don't have an industrial base to give us the things that we need for surveillance and those types of things. So now we have a presidential determination, and we're going to go out and listen to bids and proposals from industry, and I think a lot of this will be small industry, to allow us to build our own indigenous U.S. industrial base in small UASs. We have about another 7 presidential determinations in the pipeline. They're going to be for things like rare earth elements and magnets, those types of things. Question?
I'm just curious. So that assessment wasn't being done on a regular basis throughout the last decades?
No.
Fascinating. It scares me more than
People tried to do different things. So there was an S2, T2 look, sector by sector, tier by tier. The problem is they became big and unwieldy. So the executive order went out and said all federal agencies who are involved in security will get together. It was driven by a guy by the name of Eric Tuning, who is now the Secretary of Defense's Chief of Staff. And they met almost a couple times a week, Scott, over the period of 6 months to drive to this. And there's a classified annex.
Those are the formal meetings, and then every night at home he was taking calls as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it took a personal with a little fire in his belly to get this moving. But it's a really, the unclassified report is very good and sobering. The classified report is scary. So, I got 10 minutes. So let's see, we talked about that, you know what that is? Industrial base analysis and sustainment, that's fine, you know what that is. So, with that, I will open it up to questions, because I think that's more important for me.
So if I could just go back to the example of the UAVs. So,
Yes.
I mean, what specifically are you doing? I mean, there always seems to be a tension between how fast technology moves and how fast the government moves.
Sure.
And so what are you doing differently that's going to get many of these small players that are innovative, but are also open source? I mean, because that's basically the way that they've got to grow, and they grow through network effects.
Mm-hmm.
How is the government going to work with these kind of companies, I assume on a non-exclusive basis, that allows them to develop their commercial side of the business while maintaining their defense side of the business to very small?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is we are putting in place, and this is very important as you go down through the sub-tiers, standards for hardening cybersecurity of the computers and networks, even of the small guys. It'll cost a little. We're prepared to pay a little. I mean, for the Department of Defense, loss of national security intellectual property is something we're willing to pay to prevent. So we will go that way. We can go out on contract much faster using Defense Production Act Title III. So we can get money on contract quicker, and we can work, the program office can work with the small manufacturer with special authorities to help them grow their business. So we have authorities in Defense Production Act that we don't have for normal acquisition.
So from a financing end, so basically you would issue orders, they would then in essence finance those through risk capital or whatever there ever be.
We would ask them for, we will go out and ask industry for proposals, and those that look most promising, we fund.
Okay.
We just go. We go with money. We had this year, now it's not going to sound like a lot, but this year we had about $375 million-ish at the beginning of the year. Yes?
Andy Senna with the Century Foundation. I guess my question is about working with regional and local governments
This is mine.
to engage their
Up.
supply chains in the defense industry. We worked on the authorization for the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program as one example. think it's an untapped resource to the regional areas. Oh, thanks. Sorry, I'm done with my question.
Yeah, so it wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement, but you're right, there's a lot of untapped areas. And so if you have time, and with the industrial policies push on building the industrial base, our job is to make industry as much as possible aware of where they can go to find the resources needed. And then it's up to you to come in with good ideas. You and then you.
Can you talk a little bit more about these alternative contracts that you're looking at to try to speed things along? Government contracting can take sometimes longer than doing the work itself.
Frequently. So probably the fastest is other transaction authorities. Other transaction authorities allow you, it gets pretty complicated, so I'll try to give you the shortened version. You don't have to have a lot of requirements. You just have to agree on a deliverable for a price, and the contracting officer then does their magic and comes out. About how long, Leo? 5 minutes, I know. Hi, I'm waving to you too.
You can do it in months. I mean, in
Coup-
a month or so, you should be able to get an OTA in place.
Even less than that now because people are using them more. So we're down to about a week.
Couple of, maybe.
I'm sorry, a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Within a month, you should be there. Because you agree on a deliverable for a price. So it's not the old-fashioned, all these different reports that you have
Right.
to do and financial stuff. And they don't,
Right.
they have changed. They don't look at your books necessarily. You agree on a price like a commercial contract.
Think of it, and it's best used for R&D. But I'm willing to pay this amount of money for this deliverable.
Does that have to be competitive bid? And it goes lowest bid and all that kind of stuff?
No,
too, as well?
no. It's not competitive, not FAR-based. FAR is federal acquisition regulation. So those are the biggest things. We got rid of all the FARs.
It's a contract between you and the government. You're
Yes.
not competing with anybody else.
Right,
You have
exactly
an
right.
agreement. That's why it's called another transaction. You have an agreement with the agency. or
Right,
the
right.
department.
You got a question?
No, every time it's a statement too, but one of the things I'm doing, one of my elected officials came out of the defense group and one of our elected officials, our U.S. Congresswoman, is Alyssa Slotkin, so because she has a lot of government background, she has agreed to bring our non-defense manufacturers. I'm bringing 15 to 20 of them in to meet with her in about 3 weeks, so she can teach the non-defense people how to procure a defense contract. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for anyone in this room as small to mid-sized manufacturers
Absolutely.
who couldn't do it on their own.
And I won't stand up here and tell you that everything is perfect. Things do take time. The DOD is hard to work with. The DOD also has more money than any other federal agency, so sometimes it's worth the effort. Yeah, but we're not overly easy. We're trying to make it easier, faster, quicker. We'll have some bumps in the road, but I'm actually very optimistic. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, and I'm very bad with acronyms, and I was just wondering, with this focus on the defense industrial base, how is the two new organizations that were basically came out of MIVP, how much are they working with the Office of Economic Adjustment in terms of their industry resilience program? They're doing a lot of work in cybersecurity, working with industries, providing services to industries. They also provide the asset of already made local, regional, and state partners.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering how that was going forward.
So I don't know the answer. I know that both OEA and industrial policy are under my domains. I think they're working together. I've heard that, but I don't have any specifics. So we're going through our budget build for next year. And what day is it today? Exactly. I want to say last Friday, I took a brief from the deputy director of OEA, and we were going through all that. And yeah, she is working with industrial policy. She's working with also our facilities and installation sustainment people. But so I think we're getting some crosstalk. as much as it should be? Probably not. It's a big organization.
Got time for 2 more questions for Alan, and then, by the way, if you have a question, please do use the mic, otherwise they can't hear you when they're taking notes.
Oh, okay.
Alan, calling 2 more
Steve?
people.
So first, I want to endorse your recommendation on The Economist. Fantastic magazine. Learn everything you want. I have a question based upon your PhD thesis comment, right? We
Yeah.
usually drew a line from NSDD 189 and where fundamental research stops and things that we want to protect would be. Is the department looking, and this might be more of an R&E question, but I can see it blending in. Is there another look at NSDD 189 and where that fundamental research line may exist given the potential risk?
I haven't heard of any. I mean, 189, for those of you who don't know it, 189 was an executive order signed by, I think, President Reagan.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. That basically said all basic, I think it says fundamental research, actually. 6.1, some 6.2. All of that will be open and accessible. So what you got away is where do we, the government and the nation, get more benefit? By exposing research and letting other people build on it, or by hiding it away? I personally believe if it's really secure, you classify it. Otherwise, you make it open and accessible. I mean, there were a number of years when Mitsubishi stopped issuing patents for their microelectronics because they said by the time the patent process went through, we were on to the next thing. Their way to beat the bad guy was to outrun him. I think we have a lot of technical talent in America. We just need to outrun the bad guys.
Thank you. All right, we've got a creative way to get a couple more questions in. I'm going to ask Alan to go to the podium, take off, and I'm going to ask David Aufstein, and Sheila to come on over around this way so that we can lab you guys up for the next panel. And while Alan takes off the lab that he's got, and next question.
Al, a lot of the discussion here this morning was on the difficulty of scaling up production once you have a successful prototype.
Sure.
So how's the department thinking about that? Because you're doing more and more prototyping. When you find one that you like, what capabilities are you looking for in the industrial base so you can do rapid scale up? And are there any new programs to address that?
I don't really have, Mike, I don't really have a good answer for you. I mean, the issue is right. I don't think we've gotten to that level of maturity and thinking right now. So rather than stand up here and tap dance, I'm going to take the 5th.
Right. Alan, you can call in a couple more people. Michael had the microphone.
Yes.
Alan,
Mike, hold up. Just grab the mic if you don't mind. Mike, get the mic.
It's more directed at you. So MForesight, as you know, we try to gather input from the public and private sector and provide it. This is an opportunity for you, from your seat, to talk to the Leadership Council and those in the room on what is a key message that you want to leave. Talking to the private sector and to this collaborative group, what do you think would advantage the department? Any messages for us?
So I think the message to you is that first, speed matters. You know, when I was a kid growing up, people said speed kills. Now speed matters. We've got to have more agility, and that's true whether you're talking about the Department of Defense or commercial products. Got to have more agility. We've got to be willing to take a product that's not 100%. Okay? I didn't talk about it here. I think the nation, and I think industry, and I think the Department of Defense has got to finally embrace open system architectures. If we don't have open architectures, we won't be able to be fast. If we don't have open architectures, we're going to have to take more time in system design and development rather than get as much as you can out right now, and then improve it as you go forward. And then finally, I think the last message, and this will sound very ominous, we have not had a true challenger. By the way, does anybody know what November 7th, I think it's 7th is this year? 30 years since the fall of the wall. We have not had a peer competitor for 30 years. Now we got a couple. America does very well when confronted with a challenge. I think we have a challenge. I think the challenge is not just for conventional warfare, but I think it's all of government, all of economic. One thing I remember from my war college days, there's 3 elements of national power. Only one of them is called military. The other are political and economic. We need a strong industrial base. We need a strong economic base, or we, the nation, will suffer. That's my message. Anybody believe it?
And on that note,